All right, so we're here with Carrie Callahan. She wrote the story, Dirt Road Magic, winner of Writers of the Future for 2019. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So Carrie, when did you start writing?
I started writing as a kid. So in kindergarten, I was one of the first students to start using conjunctions in my sentences.
Wow.
My teacher was very surprised.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And she read them all aloud to the class, and that was my first time I fell in love with English class, for sure. And I used to write stories in 4th grade, and I was told I was a writer. You're a writer, you're a writer. But then as a teenager, like every other teenager, I wanted to be rebellious, and I was like, no, I'm going to be an artist. And so I started drawing pretty compulsively. But eventually I went to community college, I took some art classes, but I came back to writing because that felt natural to me. That was like in my veins, something I had to do. And so in my 20s, I finally started taking it like really seriously. I got my undergrad in English with a focus on creative writing, and then just kept working on my craft.
Wow.
So, and here I am.
Wonderful. And what pitfalls have you had to overcome to reach your dream?
I would say that the greatest pitfalls I've had really have largely been around self-doubt, and just I come from a pretty impoverished background, so validation is kind of weirdly important because that kind of situation can be really invalidating constantly. And so feeling like I can be a writer and it's okay to expend energy doing that and not say, some kind of blue-collar job or, like just focusing on making money or something like that, it's been a really difficult mental shift to really start taking my writing that seriously.
Yeah, well, good for you on being so persistent, and you made it here.
Yeah.
Right on. And what do you like to write about?
I like to write fantasy, science fiction, and horror as the mood strikes. But more specifically, I like to focus on people who come from similar backgrounds to my own. So people who are what I like to politely call sub-working class, who, have to kind of deal with the struggles that come with that and throw in fantastical elements to see how they change things. And I think that is a really interesting way to kind of poke and prod and experiment with humanity and bring nuance to people who are often used as, honestly, as set dressing or as plot devices, which really frustrates me.
Wow, okay. So, have you had any other sales or any other awards outside of Writers of the Future?
No. I have one story accepted to the undergraduate literary magazine, and that's about it. And this is my first professional sale, my first sale, full stop. So it's really exciting for me that it can be like the Writers of the Future and have like this whole experience to come with it. It's like this kind of hurrah, I'm here. Thing, which I'm really excited about. So.
Oh, great. Well, we're excited with you. You're on the road now.
Yeah.
And how did you hear about Writers of the Future?
It's been a while, so I don't remember exactly where I heard about it, but I believe it was on Reddit, which is like the great meta forum and also the front page of the internet, as they like to call themselves. So I think people were talking about it there, and I was like, ooh, there's no fee, and it's open. It's open for amateurs. I feel like this is something I felt comfortable applying myself to.
Good. And how many times did you enter the contest, and did you have any honorable mentions or anything before this?
I did. This is my second time entering, and the first time I got an honorable mention.
Wow.
So, honorable mention, win, it's not a bad ratio.
No, we got some talent right here, that's for sure. Okay, good. So tell us about your story without giving away the ending, and then also, like, how would you summarize your story in, like, one sentence?
The one sentence thing is always the hard part, I'd say. I'd say it's about a boy who's learning magic from a sketchy dude down the dirt road from his trailer park. And he learns that magic is not the way out that he thought it would be, and he has to make a choice based on that knowledge. I would say that's kind of the gist.
Yeah, that sums it up. That was a very great story that you wrote. So what inspired your story?
I was inspired by various things that I experienced growing up. So obviously not the magic part. I mean, I wish. But I used to walk down this dirt road, and I used to walk down across this field where there was this barbed wire fence. And then I was thinking about that memory, and I imagined a boy walking down that field by the barbed wire fence. And then I had to ask him, I was like, well, where are you going? I mean, I know where I was going, but where are you going? And he's like, well, I'm going to old Hurley's house. And I was like, well, okay, but who's old Hurley? And then I had to figure that out. And he turned into a character based on a lot of sketchy adults I knew as a kid. And it just kind of, the story unfolded from there.
Wow, fantastic. You have quite an imagination then, huh?
Well, I mean, I try to cultivate it.
Nice. All right, so does your story offer any underlying message?
I think so. I think it's largely about what we do with the things that we learn as we're growing up and the choices that we make and who they turn us into and whether you can maintain your integrity in really challenging situations. So I think that in the situation that my main character finds himself in, he finds himself, he has this idea of what things are, and it's this beautiful idealistic perspective, but then he kind of starts to see some chips. He gets a little closer and he starts to notice it's not as smooth as he thought, and he has to kind of shift his perspective. And so he's coming of age, by learning these things. And it's an unfortunate thing to happen to someone so young. Yeah. But it happens to a lot of people at that class level, I would say. It definitely happened to me. So I think that's an important thing to explore.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so tell me about the Writers of the Future book, and what would a reader expect to find in the book, and why would you recommend it?
I think that the Writers of the Future book is really valuable because it's a gateway kind of book. If you want to be the first fans of somebody, and you want to say, well, I knew them back then, if you want to get the first story or the first of maybe their third story they've ever had published, max, that's the book to get. If you want to discover who you want to start stacking on your to-read pile going forward, that's the person to get, There are certain authors, I think, that once they hit a certain level of success, they're inaccessible. Just because they're just huge names, like Stephen King and Neil Gaiman. I mean, you can't just walk up to these guys, They have whole event spaces and lines out front and all that stuff. But these are authors who are new, who are accessible, who are available to you if you wanted to engage them as a fan and you want to learn something new and find new fiction. I think it's a fantastic way into that.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes total sense. All right, so this year we have a discussion guide for reading groups and a high school unit plan. So why would you recommend Writers of the Future to these audiences?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think first, the editorial process, the way that the stories are chosen, has a lot, is keeping in mind the younger readers also, and not, it's clean. There's nothing horribly graphic in it for sure, but at the same time, it's new and it's interesting, but also it's encouraging. So these are all new authors. So a lot of the things that teenagers read are people who are established, classics that have been around for, classics that have been around for decades, that have been being taught as the canon. Everything's polished, and it's not the author's first work, it's their 50th work, and it can feel really discouraging to look at that and think you could ever do it. Yeah. But Writers of the Future, because it's amateur only, because if you're a professional, then you're out of the pool. It shows what an amateur can accomplish. You don't have to make it to this level of success to matter. And I think, especially for young writers, that's a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, that's a great take on it. All right, and what plans do you have for your future career, and where can we find more of your work?
Well, in my future career, I plan on continuing to write short stories because I think it's a great way to explore ideas in ways that are very fast, whereas, with novels, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint.
Yeah.
But I also like writing novels. They let me get more into the details of characters and plots, and I'm working on a novel right now, Blood Tramp Blues. I like to say it's Kerouac meets Cthulhu.
Oh, wow.
It's a hitchhiker gets involved with a Lovecraftian cult after her travel companion goes missing.
Wow.
So it becomes this much bigger deal following these characters who live in the underbelly of America. So I'm working on a novel, and so I'm working on that, and I'm working on my second draft, and I'm working on short stories. So it's just, all of the things. I just want to get all of the things. I want to publish them. I want to hopefully, write more about marginalized people, especially people from the lower classes, because I feel like there's a certain lack of representation, a realistic, nuanced representation.
Yes. Well, you should.
Yes. And if anybody wants to find more of my work, I usually post stuff on my blog. You can find my social media links at my website at carriecallahan.com.
So carriecallahan.com, that's where we can find you.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's all we have today, Carrie. So thank you very much for coming by and chatting with me, and congratulations again on your win.
Thank you.